Bugenholz. It is absolutely unique in that its configuration is like a flattened figure of 8. There is an overpass, therefore, and an underpass. It's got just about every kind of corner you could possibly imagine, speeds of up to 190 miles an hour. Like all circuits these days, it's very difficult to pass on, but it really wouldn't matter what kind of circuit you built, it would still be difficult to pass on, because the performance of the cars is so similar and the capabilities of the drivers are so similar. So, as ever, getting into the first corner first is going to be vital.
And of course the best help to that is get on pole position, and that's what Jacques Villeneuve did magnificently. He really was the class of qualifying. Villeneuve on pole, and Damon Hill was actually languishing in 4th place until the closing 2 or 3 minutes of the session, before he's finally summoned up all the pace that he could muster to put him alongside Villeneuve. Now Hill's on the right-hand side of the grid, that's on our left looking down. Now normally that would confer a significant advantage for Villeneuve on the left because of the rubber that builds up on the racing line, but because of the amount of rain that we've had here, there really is no rubber around, so Damon shouldn't be at a significant advantage. So we're going to see a real battle between these two off the line into that all-important first corner. But I very much doubt that, unlike Ayrton Senna with Alain Prost a few years ago, we're going to see Hill charge up the inside and challenge Villeneuve to go off or to turn in and hit him, because whilst there's no doubt that if both of these two go out of the race the championship victory will go to Damon Hill, that's not the way that Damon would wish to win it. He's far too much of a gentleman for that. Gerhard Berger qualified well in 4th place. That was one of the best results he's had this year. Mika Hakkinen showing the McLaren improved form in 5th was better than average, as was Eddie Irvine as well in 6th. He's pretty happy, but perhaps the real star of qualifying was Heinz-Harald Frentzen in 7th place, by far and away the best for him for this year, and of course he's going to be moving in to that seat vacated by Damon Hill next year, whereas Jean Alesi, he did poorly with a 9th place, well below his normal, and Rubens Barrichello back in 11th.
2 minutes to go. Let's have some final thoughts from the pit lane and Tony Jardi.
Spoken to Adrian Newey, the designer of the Williams team, and he said there's a 20% chance of rain later on, perhaps halfway through the race. Damon told us on the grid, obviously he's hoping it stays dry. James Robinson, another of the engineers, is worried that Damon may make too conservative a start and the others might get inside him. Otherwise, he says the equipment is absolutely equal between the two drivers. Having said that, Damon made a final rear wing change on the grid. He lightened off the rear wing to be identical to his teammate Jacques Villeneuve.
It's a 53-lap race, 3.64 miles to the lap, 192.9 miles for the race. As Jonathan just said, Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost decided the World Championship here in 1989 and 90. First of all, as McLaren teammates when in 1989 Prost and Senna collided at the notorious chicane, which is just outside your picture on the left. And then the following year there was another collision with this time Alain Prost in the Ferrari and Ayrton Senna in the McLaren. Prost was the champion in 89 and Senna was the champion in 1990. We've got previous winners here because Gerhard Berger has won the Japanese Grand Prix twice. Michael Schumacher won it last year. Damon won it in the most appalling conditions in 1994, one of the best achievements in his 20 Grand Prix victory career. And as you can see, the grid is now being cleared for the World Championship shootout of 1996 between Jacques Villeneuve. You can see him on the right-hand side of your picture on the front row of the grid, on the staggered grid, and away they go on the formation lap.
Now it's in these crucial first 200 or 300 metres that Hill's chance of winning this race, or indeed Villeneuve's chance, are going to be set, because I believe that by that point, that first corner, whoever's ahead, and if it is Villeneuve ahead of Hill, is unlikely to get beaten on the road. So through that first turn one, that's 150 miles an hour. They're now coming up through the S's. This is a wonderful section. 4th gear, about 110, 15 miles an hour, through that left, then through the right. We're coming up behind the pits area at the moment. and then round through another left-right. This right-hander is about 110 miles an hour in third gear into fourth, flat up that hill, powering on fourth gear into fifth at 150, coming out of this left-hander at about 165 miles an hour in fifth gear, accelerating then up to about 170 before coming into that point. This is the first Degner curve, tricky curve that one, where we see a big gravel trap, it's often used. Through there about 135 miles an hour in fourth, then down to a second gear corner, that's behind us, they've already been through that, and then up through the gears to fifth, back from 170 to right down to the hairpin, one of the slowest corners on the track. Not really an overtaking opportunity because you can't get a long enough run into it, but you only go around there at about 35 miles an hour in second gear, then you pump up through the gears, third, fourth, fifth. Through this fast sweeping section, it's all absolutely flat out in the dry, no great drama about that, before they come into what we call the spoon curves. Now, it was at the second spoon that Damon Hill went off twice last year, the second time terminally. We're looking down on them, so they'll be from sixth gear, dab the brakes from 180, down to fourth for that first one they're going through there now at about 120 miles an hour, dab the brakes again, then down to third gear. For you can see it's tighter, but this is crucial because it leads on to the long main straight, and it's an uphill straight. So 90 miles an hour in third gear through that one, up through the gears, fourth, fifth, sixth. Now the corner at the top of the hill here, the 130R, is one of the most awesome corners on any Grand Prix circuit. It is taken in qualifying, at least if you're Jacques Villeneuve, absolutely flat out. Foot buried to the floor at 165 miles an hour, turning in now, sweeping through that. Damon just used to feather off a little bit, but Johnny Herman had a big accident here in qualifying, in fact, losing it on the final exit curve where Villeneuve is now, and doing a lot of damage to his Sauber car. Fortunately, it was rebuildable. So back now, right down through the gears to the second gear chicane. This is the one and only real overtaking opportunity. Second gear, round about 35 miles an hour, that's all it is, before they then come back up through the gears, down the hill. It's very steeply downhill at this point to take the start-finish line. So remember, these first 200 or 300 meters are going to be the crucial ones. Villeneuve, I suspect, is going to get the jump, but Damon Hill's going to have to do the best start he possibly can, but within 200 or 300 meters, if he's not ahead, I think he's going to start to see a conservative approach. He cannot afford to get involved in a tangle.
And he'll have a job to get ahead, of course, because he is that vital car's length behind Jacques Villeneuve on the right-hand side of your screen. That is Canadian Jacques Villeneuve, 25 years old, possibly on the brink of becoming world champion. Certainly Damon Hill is on the brink of becoming world champion. There are 19 starters in this race. Giovanni Lavaggi in the Minardi failed to qualify. So on the right, Villeneuve, on the left, Hill. Behind Villeneuve is Schumacher. Behind Hill is Gerhard Berger. And as usual, watch for the lights. When all five go out, there will be a hold which has been put into the computer of an indeterminate length up to 7 seconds. And when the lights go out, the last Grand Prix of 1996 will begin.
And that's an aborted start. The start has been aborted. Maybe somebody installed.
There is the reason. It's one of the McLarens. It's David Coulthard. Well, there is a major Grade A Mark 1 letdown. David Coulthard clearly has stalled his engine, and now we have to go through the whole thing again.
Yes, that really is a great anticlimax there. What would have happened is that Coulthard would have come to the line. He may simply just have stalled his engine in the way that any of us occasionally stall engines at traffic lights or whatever. There may be a mechanical problem with that McLaren. We'll see if he remains in his race car. That'll be the clue when they take the restart, which of course now they will do, but there'll be another 5-minute board. It's going to take a few more minutes before they're ready for that as well. Now what happens here is that it's so important that nobody is left stationary on the line, because of course the danger factor of a car towards the back of the field doing already what might be 120, 130 miles an hour before coming across a car like Coulthard is immense. Therefore, that's why we have this formation lap. That's why they come to the grid, and that's why it's very important. But Coulthard will now have to start from the back of the field, because he's not going to be allowed to resume that place, because there's always the chance, or has been in the past, that drivers have stalled accidentally on purpose in order to give themselves a better break for some reason, to change something or whatever. But that is now an added blow for David Coulthard, who was very disappointed after qualifying when he spun midway through the session, giving him no chance to improve from his 8th place, and he had the tantalising sight of Hakkinen there in 5th, and it's going to get even worse now.
Yes, and unless I'm very much mistaken, Eddie Irvine, in his first Japanese Grand Prix in the Jordan team, allegedly, and I use the word advisedly, allegedly stalled on purpose because he had a problem, as a result of which the race was restarted. Eddie Irvine might challenge that view, but I think that is indeed the case. From 5th position.
Well, let's just think how Damon Hill is feeling there in his Williams on our left. He's had 3 long weeks to try and finish this particular battle for the year, to end up winning this championship, or trying to, and he would have pumped himself up, getting ready for that start. Away they go now on the next formation lap, and they can see them working around David Coulthard's car. Now, if he has got an engine problem, they may be able to fix it on that race car, but his alternative would be to get in the spare car, and you can bet that the McLaren mechanics are now busily getting that ready for him, and that if they don't get it ready in time, and indeed it looks unlikely, he'll have to start from the pit lane, and we may well see that happen. So let's go around the track again. This is a fabulous circuit. I used to love racing here. I had my first race in 1982 in a Route Honda Formula 2 car, and then went on to do 6 years of Formula 1 racing at this circuit. And its flowing nature, these constantly swerving bends, right, left, right, give it a wonderfully flowing characteristic. It's fast, it's got some very fast corners. It's a pretty safe circuit too. This is again that very tricky corner. Degner won the first one, and then into this second, we might get a view of it this time. We didn't before. There it is. That's the second gear one. That means about 80 miles an hour. Hard on the power. That's coming out of that second gear corner, up through the gears to 150. Very hard braking. We're going to see some glowing red-hot carbon fibre brake discs at this point. Look out for those in the race. You need to hug the inside of that apex and that hairpin very tightly indeed. Second gear. And in second gear, flat out, you're going to be doing 90 miles an hour before going up into third with your fingertip gear change. Over this brow, building the speed up again. And the drivers will be looking at the temperature of their engines. Villeneuve here going significantly slower than he was last time. He's not going to want to hold his Williams on the grid any longer than he possibly has to. Another thing worth thinking about is that this start is downhill. Now, we know that jump starts get penalised by a 10-second time penalty. That means coming into the pit, stopping, and then being told to go move away again. And that happened to both Ferraris last year. They both had time penalties. So you may wonder, how do they manage to get a good start on a downhill? And the reason is that most cars nowadays have handbrakes and little buttons, effectively, that they push when they get into their allotted spot. And as soon as they get back on full throttle, the handbrake automatically disengages, or indeed they simply release a button on the steering wheel. But the cars do have a mechanism for that, so let's hope we don't see any jump starts this time. And again, it did happen last year. Pit lane entry on your right, and it's a long pit lane here. The speed limit is 120 kilometers or 75 miles an hour through that final left-hand corner. Now they're accelerating. We can't see the picture, but they are accelerating downhill. They're coming down to take their positions on the grid now.
So, no change at the front of the grid, of course, but David Coulthard has got away and will be starting from the back of the grid. I'm sorry if you haven't got a picture. We haven't got one either, so at least we're even there. And we will therefore lapse into a radio commentary and do the best we can without being able to see the pictures that we are supposed to be looking at and that give us the story of the race. So, they line up at Suzuka with Damon Hill alongside, but a little further back from Jacques Villeneuve, both in the Williams Renaults. And the race gets away later. It's going to be a trying time for David Coulthard, because instead of starting from 8th on the grid, he's now going to start from 19th on the grid and has got to claw his way back from the field and try to get through. And here we are, Villeneuve on the right, Hill is on the left. The lights go out and the Japanese Grand Prix is go, and it is go this time. And a brilliant start by Damon Hill, and Villeneuve has been passed by Jean Alesi and by one of the McLarens. So a terrible start for Jacques Villeneuve, and Damon Hill is in front. But remember, and I'm not trying to be a Jeremiah, but Damon Hill did exactly this at Monza, and out goes Jean Alesi. I don't know what the problem was in terms of somebody hitting him, but Jean Alesi is the first retirement in Japan, and that was at the very first corner. No doubt we will see a replay. The battered Benetton is out, and so that is going to make things much more difficult for Benetton to stay ahead of Ferrari in the Constructors' Championship.
Well, what a superb start there from Damon Hill. His relief will be absolutely enormous, because not only has he got away first, he will know that Villeneuve is well back in his mirrors. He'll know that Berger is right behind him. He will also know that the performance advantage of Damon Hill in the Williams is well in front of that of Berger in the Benetton. Now here's a Lacey. This surely must be a Lacey here. Look out for a car. There he is on the right-hand side, but we didn't see how that started. But a big impact there. A Lacey probably got with a bit of a wheel banging session with somebody. We may see another replay. This really hasn't been a Lacey's weekend. 9th in qualifying and now out of the race.
Yeah, Lacey was 9th on the grid. He may well have had a tangle either with Martin Brundle or with Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who were respectively behind and in front of him. And there is Jacques Villeneuve, and he's down in 6th position. So he really has got it all to do. And Damon Hill now is ahead of Gerhard Berger. So it's Williams leading, Benetton second, Häkkinen is in 3rd place. And we're riding with Jacques Villeneuve now as he comes out to complete the first lap. And you can see the gap between himself and Damon Hill after 4 seconds after just 1 lap. And Gerhard Berger is starting to give Damon Hill a very hard time indeed. Berger, who like Benetton has yet to win a Grand Prix this year, and the Austrian, there is the gap between Damon Hill, and he's in the S-curve now, the S-curve which leads into turn 7, the climbing left-hander, and that must be David Coulthard's car. We've seen Häkkinen in 3rd position, so David Coulthard looks as though he may well be out of the Japanese Grand Prix already. He had that stall, as a result of which the race was aborted, and here is Coulthard exiting the pit lane, and he's now the thick end of a lap behind everybody else, having had something done to the engine or the control system. So Hill leads, Berger second, Häkkinen is in 3rd place, and in 4th position is Schumacher. Here's a replay of the start, and look at Jacques Villeneuve on the right. You see Damon Hill gets a magnificent start, Berger tucks up behind him, Schumacher comes through to the left, Alesi has a go, and I suspect that Alesi may have got involved with Eddie Irvine, because the Ferrari was right up alongside him. Alesi was making another magnificent start. Go.
Now let's look from above. Now watch Hill get off the line obviously earlier, streaking away there from Jacques Villeneuve. It looked like Villeneuve was just being dozy there because he's losing out all the way. Berger's gone by, Häkkinen's gone by on the left, and then the Ferrari's coming through. Then we've got Martin Brundle making a great start too. He's actually up to 7th on the first lap. But we're now going to see what Villeneuve can do. If there's anybody out there that can show us what determination in a great car can do, he knows that somehow he's got to try and get back up in front. It's a long, long shot for Jacques Villeneuve now, and the chances that he did have been virtually all blown by that start. But let's not forget, back 3 weeks ago at the last Grand Prix, Damon Hill was leading and Jacques Villeneuve was back in 4th place at the start of the race. Jacques Villeneuve is now back in 6th, but at the end Villeneuve was ahead, so we can't assume, and Damon Hill won't assume, that it's all going to go his way. There's a long way to go yet. Berger breathing all over the back of Hill is worrying for Damon, because what he doesn't want to do is to have to try and defend any position, because every driver here knows that Damon is going to have to back off in a confrontational situation rather than risk coming unstuck.
Yes, and on a long-term basis, I would bet that the Williams setup is better than the Benetton. Benetton had to make some major changes to both Berger and Alesi's car after the warm-up this morning. They were very unhappy indeed. They were right down at the bottom of the grid, and they had to make those changes. So now, on lap 3 in this 53-lap race, Damon Hill has got Gerhard Berger right behind him. Mika Häkkinen is in 3rd place, 2.5 seconds behind. Schumacher is 4th, just behind the McLaren. In 5th and 6th places, and you're looking down on them now. There they are. It is Eddie Irvine in the Ferrari and Jacques Villeneuve. And the gap between Villeneuve and Damon Hill on lap 3 is 4.5 seconds. As Jonathan has said, Damon has got to play it very cool indeed as Gerhard Berger comes right up alongside him and goes over the curb at the chicane. He was having a go there. Damon Hill rebuffed him, but at the same time kept the Williams clear of the Benetton, and look at the gap he's pulled out as a result of Berger running over the curb, and that's given Mika Häkkinen the opportunity to close up a bit on the Benetton. Hill goes round turn 1. This is a 155 miles an hour corner on the entry. That is Gerhard Berger, and look at his wing, look at his front wing. Gerhard Berger has got a wing problem. He's going to have to come in and change the nose, and this is going to make things even better for Damon Hill. Mika Häkkinen will then move up into second place, Schumacher to third.
Right, let's have a look. There goes Berger up the inside. Frankly, he tried that from a long way behind, and it looked a little bit of a half-hearted measure that really was going to try and capitalise on exactly the point that I made, and that's the fact that Hill was going to be very, very cautious should that kind of thing happen. But Damon did exactly the right thing. He was well ahead. Now, actually, I wonder if that makes things, in fact, better for Villeneuve rather than worse, because Berger's going to have to come into the pits. That's one car. That's Villeneuve now up to 5th place at the end of this lap, and Berger's obviously holding a few up in the meantime, and that's losing ground. And Berger made a mistake. Great shame for the Austrian, because he was looking in great shape in qualifying and looking very competitive in the race.
There's Frank Williams. You saw Ross Brawn on the pit lane earlier on. You're looking at Gerhard Berger now, and that drunken, broken wing of his, which is going to make him come in. Meantime, he's not yielding, and he's got Häkkinen, Schumacher, Irvine and Villeneuve right behind him. We ride with Damon Hill, lap 4, extending his lead all the time, with Gerhard Berger holding those up behind him. Look at the track, it's clear behind Damon. Now, I wonder whether there was any contact. There must have been some contact between Hill and Berger, at least in the form of Damon treading on Gerhard Berger's front wing, or maybe it was the curb. But keep your fingers crossed, those of you who are backing Damon Hill, that there was no contact. And into the pits comes Gerhard Berger. Up to second goes Häkkinen, third goes Schumacher, fourth goes Irvine, fifth goes Villeneuve, sixth is Martin Brundle.
I really don't think it was a problem for Hill on the back of his car, because it was the right side of that front wing that was broken on Berger's car, and that would be consistent with him hitting the curb and taking it off that way. Clearly Williams getting ready. I think that's a precaution. They didn't see what happened. We get a much better view than the Williams team do of what went on out there. But unless anybody thinks that this is Damon Hill's strategy to go out for one glorious victory, to take the challenge, to take the championship, I don't think that was in his mind at the start of all this. What was in his mind was to make the best possible start he could and then see where it left him. Now that it's left him well out in front, that's exactly what he's going to really try and pick up the cudgels and do. There's the glowing red-hot discs. Absolutely normal, of course. Damon has really got a great opportunity now. He's got Häkkinen in second place, and Häkkinen is bound to be significantly slower than Damon, and Häkkinen's going to be holding up Schumacher, who perhaps now is his major threat. So things looking very, very good indeed, and it does look as if, after all, Damon has got a very good chance of going out with a wonderful victory.
Oh, watch it, Jonathan. We've all said that. Remember, at Monza, Damon Hill was in the lead commandingly, and on lap 6 he hit that tyre barrier. Well, there are no tyre barriers to hit here. But Tony Jardine is in the Williams pit lane. What's the news?
The Williams crew have gone out into the pit lane with a fresh set of tyres ready for Damon Hill just in case, but I have checked with the team and they say Damon reports no damage at the moment, which is good news.
On the radio, of course, he will have done that. He's in constant radio contact with his people in the pit lane, and Damon Hill is coming through now to complete the lap, start another one. 5 laps completed, and look at that at this stage of the race. Mega lead for Damon Hill over Mika Häkkinen in the McLaren, with Michael Schumacher right behind him, with Eddie Irvine an 1/8 of a second behind him. Jacques Villeneuve is in 5th position now, but Villeneuve is 6.8, nearly 7 seconds behind Damon Hill. And really, he's got a gigantic mountain to climb, because Villeneuve, look at the talent that he's got ahead of him. Eddie Irvine in his first season with the Ferrari, who has driven extremely well. Now here is Häkkinen, there is Schumacher, the 2 Ferraris are together. That is Villeneuve in 5th position. So 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th are separated by about 2 seconds as they come underneath the overpass. This is the slowest corner on the course. We're riding with Jacques Villeneuve, who's got Eddie Irvine in front of him, out of the 45-mile-an-hour hairpin. Round the looping right-hander, he's doing about 170 miles an hour here as he comes up to the first spoon at 105 miles an hour. Backs off a little more. This is where Damon Hill and Coulthard went off last year. This is where the track drops down and then starts to climb up to the notorious 130R.
Now you may well wonder why, if Villeneuve should be on a charge, why isn't he right up behind Eddie Irvine's gearbox? And the reason is, well, in fact he is. At least he is on the very slow parts. And the problem is that on that hairpin that preceded the point that we just saw them, Villeneuve would have been right behind him, but what is 0.2 of a second at 30 miles an hour or 40 miles an hour is a lot longer on the track when you're up to some 130 miles an hour. So Damon Hill really is in the best position. He's got clear track in front of him. He's got a dry track. He's got a car he knows well. He knows the circuit well. He'll have great confidence, no doubt, in the reliability of his car. But it's important that he doesn't get too conservative here. He needs to keep pushing on pretty hard, because he will know from the experience at Estoril that he can never underestimate that Canadian teammate of his, Jacques Villeneuve, and Villeneuve may yet find a way past and get himself up into a challenging position. It doesn't look that likely at this stage, but it's a long way to go yet. And behind Hill, Mika Häkkinen's got to be fending off the very close attentions of Michael Schumacher, so Häkkinen can't drive exactly as he would like, and behind Häkkinen there's a traffic jam. Schumacher, Irvine in fourth, Villeneuve in fifth. They are all being held up, basically, by Mika Häkkinen.
Damon Hill rolls it round the hairpin. When I say rolls it round, I don't mean that he's taking it easily indeed. That's just the slowest corner on the circuit. And the Englishman, who has already won 7 Grand Prix this year, is not going to equal, and certainly not therefore going to beat, the 9 victory in one season record of Nigel Mansell and Michael Schumacher, who share that great honour. But he's certainly going to have won far more Grand Prix than anybody else. He's already won a very prestigious award for that, the Champagne Trophy. And coming towards us now, so there's Häkkinen, Schumacher, Eddie Irvine, Villeneuve and Martin Brundle going extremely well ahead of Barrichello. Behind Barrichello is Frentzen in 8th position. That is Olivier Panis in the Ligier, who is 9th, and following him is Johnny Herbert in the 2nd, Sauber 10th.
Now let's look closely at this gap between Hill and Häkkinen behind. At the end of lap 5, it was 4.6 seconds. At the end of the last lap, it was 3.9. It's now 3.8. Häkkinen is actually closing on Damon Hill, albeit by a small amount, as the laps go on. And that's something which Damon really doesn't want to let keep there. I think he needs to try and extend that gap. He should be able to extend it, I believe, if he and Häkkinen on the same refueling strategy. And again, I think they will be. The most likely option here is 2 stops. That means the first stop between round about lap 17 to lap 23. That's what I think I'd expect the first stops to be. And then lap 36 to lap 40 would be about the time for the second stops. We may find 1 or 2 people going for 1 stop, but I don't think any of the front runners will. It's not absolutely impossible that somebody may be going for 3 stops, and that would be the first one round about lap 13, lap 14, but it looks very unlikely to me.
So remember that gap, 3.8 seconds. Here's the leader. There is the McLaren of Mika Häkkinen with Michael Schumacher. And of course, if Villeneuve has got that problem of turbulence that Jonathan was telling us about, so has Schumacher trying to get past Mika Häkkinen. Villeneuve trying to get past Eddie Irvine. Martin Brundle is going extremely well. He's only lapping about 0.2 of a second slower than Jacques Villeneuve, and Brundle is in the points. Brundle fighting for his position in the Jordan team next year. Häkkinen, Schumacher, Irvine, Villeneuve, no change there. And Martin Brundle was expected to lose his place in the Jordan team to Damon Hill, who spurned Jordan, went to Arras indeed, and now we're back again with Villeneuve through the chicane. Eddie Irvine driving a stormer of a race, because Irvine, the Irishman who joined Ferrari this year, has had very, very little testing, unlike his team leader, Michael Schumacher, who has hogged it all because he is the man to develop the car. So Eddie Irvine, with comparatively little experience in the Ferrari, difficult car to drive, very difficult, is doing superbly well, as he is there to stay ahead of Villeneuve.
Absolutely right. Now, when we had that last on-board view from Villeneuve's car, it looked very much as if the Ferrari had loads more horsepower than the Williams, because Irvine simply blasted away from that chicane, leaving Villeneuve fading away. But the truth is not that. The truth is that they both accelerated pretty much the same rate, but it's simply the fact that Irvine, being ahead, can actually get his foot down on the throttle earlier than Jacques Villeneuve, and therefore there's a delay. And that's therefore why we see the car ahead tending to accelerate faster out of corners, and we see the car behind, as exactly now, tend to close up under braking. Irvine had to hit the brakes before Villeneuve, hence Villeneuve appears to close up. Irvine can then hit the accelerator before Villeneuve, and therefore he appears to pull away.
52-lap race, incidentally, not 53. We've lost a lap as a result of Coulthard stalling his engine and that first start being aborted. So correction, 53 laps, and that will bring the race distance down to just under 190 miles. We're on lap 9 now, with a static situation at the moment. Damon Hill is leading Häkkinen by 4.5 seconds, so he's maintaining that lead. Indeed, his last lap was a big 0.7 of a second faster. And Jacques Villeneuve now gets that view of the Ferrari rear wing as he comes out of the turn 18 and builds up to nearly 190 miles an hour before he backs off for the 155 mile an hour turn 1, which he's approaching now. Just imagine backing off from 190 to 155, which is a jolly sight faster than most of us ever go in our entire lifetime. So, turn 3, the right-hander turn 4, then left, right, 5, 6, and into the long left-hander turn 7.
And just listen to the engine. Listen to the engine. Listen to it flat out round here, up through the gears. When we get a chance to see that again, particularly on that very fast corner at the end of the main uphill straight into the left 130R as we call it, just listen to how much or how little the driver eases off the throttle. They probably won't have to brake, they just feather back a little bit, and that's Gerhard Berger, of course, running around with his new wing. He's now set the fastest lap of the race so far on a 45.5. He's back in 11th place. Obviously, a lot of work to do. We're not going to see Berger finish in the top 3, I'm sure of that, unless we have some very highly unusual circumstances.
Yes, remember Gerhard Berger, the man that was challenging Damon Hill for the lead. Well, as Jonathan says, he's now the fastest man on the track. The lap record here is held by Nigel Mansell, 1 minute 40.6 in a Williams FW14 with a 3.5-litre engine. Damon Hill there has got a Renault 3-litre engine, and his fastest lap is of the order of 1 minute 46. So Eddie Irvine and Villeneuve still battling for that 5th position. Now behind them, it's Martin Brundle in 6th position, and Villeneuve having a look as he comes up to the chicane, and Eddie Irvine rebuffing him. Villeneuve is quite the calmest, most relaxed, laid-back person I've ever met anywhere. But even he must be getting a bit agitated because he can't get past Eddie Irvine. He is now 8.5 seconds behind Damon Hill. And what's more, he's got Martin Brundle closing on him. Martin Brundle is closing on Jacques Villeneuve because Irvine is going slower than Villeneuve ideally could go if he could get past him. Martin Brundle has got a clear track in front of him. Hopefully we'll see the gold-coloured Jordan in a moment. As we look down from the helicopter, the gap between Brundle in 6th place and Villeneuve in 5th position is just over 2 seconds. And you're looking at Irvine, Villeneuve now.
Now then, Berger is 3.5 seconds behind Johnny Herbert in 10th place. So if we see a view of Berger, look out for a Sauber just ahead. Now, let's see how Villeneuve again. He's going to try and find a way past Eddie Irvine. He needs to. Irvine's holding him up. Huge frustration here. That's that hairpin. Now you see again Irvine pull away. Up through the gears. Let's listen again with that Renault engine revving up to nearly 17,000 revs as they come round. Now we're coming towards the spoon corners. Villeneuve's already thinking about how to close up at the crucial part. We've seen him have a couple of stabs at it, and that is into that chicane, which is 2 corners away now. So through the second spoon, 30 miles an hour, sorry, third gear, 90 miles an hour. Villeneuve needs to be close. Villeneuve's going to need his increased pace through this corner. This is the 130R. Very tricky right behind somebody because you lose your downforce by being so close just when you want it. But he's well placed. Can he get out inside this time? Well, the trouble is Irvine's such a hard man to get by, and Villeneuve will know that all too well. Villeneuve will know also that to have a chance of winning this championship, he has to finish. Now, I just wonder whether or not Williams might be contemplating modifying their strategy, because on the face of it, these cars are all going to be running a 2-stop strategy, and that's again the first stop round about lap 18, lap 19. They're on the 12th lap now, but it might be that Williams could take a flyer and start and bring Villeneuve in for a very short pit stop. The problem is the pit lane itself is pretty long, to try and get him out of the traffic. That's what Villeneuve needs to do. I would wager that if they can get Villeneuve out of the traffic, he will be the fastest man on the circuit. And the problem is all the time that he follows along like this, if he and Irvine make pit stops at about the same time, he could once again find himself being held up. It's a tricky situation.
Yes, and it might well happen the other way round, of course. That's where Michael Schumacher has gained places this year by coming into the pits, making a faster pit stop and getting out in front. And it wouldn't be the first time he'd done that. So there's no guarantee that if they bring Villeneuve in first and let Irvine go on, that when Irvine comes in, he won't be even quicker in the pit lane. It's a toss-up. And this underlines the fact that Grand Prix racing now is not just about the car, it's not just about the driver, it's about the teams, the mechanics, their fitness, their ability to change wheels quickly, to refuel the car quickly, and there's a possibility of the Benetton team losing one of their track members this year, and the others were explaining to me today that it would take the rest of them quite a long time to get up to speed with a new man. That's how much teamwork counts. And again, Villeneuve has a look, and this time is he going through? Yes! Eddie Irvine defers to Jacques Villeneuve, who at last, from his point of view, as he comes through on lap 12, has got past that roadblock in front of him, the V10 Ferrari of Eddie Irvine, and we can expect Jacques Villeneuve now to pull away from Irvine. He's in Villeneuve, therefore, is up into 4th position, 3 seconds behind Michael Schumacher. And if Irvine was a tough nut to pass, Michael Schumacher is going to be doubly so.
But let's watch Villeneuve's lap times. Now, his last lap was a 1 minute 45.7. The fastest lap of the race so far is a 45.3. Here's how it was done. So he's up the inside, closing, braking, pulling 3.5 G right down to 30 miles an hour, locks the right front wheel momentarily. Watch him running wide. He can't stop the car quite early enough, but just tucks it in to get to the apex. Beautifully executed manoeuvre coming by Eddie Irvine. And you know, the best thing about that manoeuvre is the fact that it's Villeneuve's speed. Look at him get a bit sideways there. That's not a big deal, actually. The big deal is the fact that Villeneuve's speed, Villeneuve's courage through that fast corner before that chicane. Villeneuve would have been flat on the throttle at 160 miles an hour, knowing that he was losing front-end downforce from his Williams. Very few would be able to do that in the way that he had. We don't have a corner here at Suzuka, as we did at Estoril, where Villeneuve can go around the outside. Another replay. Look, he's coming from quite a long way behind. I must say, credit to Eddie Irvine here. He could have closed that door quite hard, and he could have made it very difficult for Villeneuve to get by, but he left him the open room up the inside. I think he would have been full of admiration, too, from the Canadian speed through that fast corner.
Oh, now Jacques Villeneuve has got Michael Schumacher in 3rd place, about 3 seconds ahead of him. Well, less than that now as they come out of the chicane. And it could well be that what Jonathan was hypothesising about Villeneuve and Irvine could happen with Villeneuve and Schumacher. And let us remember that at Estoril for the Portuguese Grand Prix, Villeneuve passed Michael Schumacher in the pits.
Right, and here's the news. Damon Hill's last lap was a 1:45.8. Jacques Villeneuve's last lap, a 1:44.9. Villeneuve, as I suspected, is absolutely flying. He's now nearly a second faster than Damon Hill. He's closed that gap from being 3 seconds behind Michael Schumacher. That Schumacher ahead of Villeneuve. He's now just 1.5 seconds behind. This is tremendous driving from Villeneuve, but as we've said, getting past Schumacher is going to be another deal. On the other hand, he might not have to be held up too long because the first round of pit stops are surely only 5 laps or so away.
And if you've just joined the Japanese Grand Prix, this is the news. We're on lap 14 with Damon Hill leading Mika Häkkinen by 4 seconds after an aborted start. David Coulthard stalled his engine at the start from 8th on the grid. There was a delay while the grid was reformed. When the race started, Damon Hill had an absolutely magnificent start. You've just seen the tyres out there for Jacques Villeneuve, who is in 4th position. That is Michael Schumacher ahead of him. As I was saying, Damon Hill had an absolutely magnificent start. All the people that have been knocking him for his bad starts this year will have to swallow their words. And now Villeneuve, driving out of his skin, has closed right up on Michael Schumacher and comes in ideally placed. Now, if the Williams team can get an absolutely super stop, Michael Schumacher could be up against it when he comes in. This is lap 15. Mika Häkkinen is still second. There is Villeneuve, who's just crossed the speed limit line, the white line across the track. It's a very long entry. He'll lead and Villeneuve. Now, let's watch very carefully. Up go the hands when the There was a bit of delay there. That was not an ideal stop from Jacques Villeneuve's point of view. And he rejoins the pit as coming through towards us is Gerhard Berger. Now, Berger is in 10th position, so Jacques Villeneuve has rejoined in 11th place. That's not the end of the world, of course, and out of the race has gone Pedro Diniz. He went off repeatedly in practice, 3 times in all. He's done it again. That's the man who's taking his $12 million to Arrows next year to accompany Damon Hill in the TWR Arrows team. And he's gone off, as you can see, at the chicane. Already the tractor is there to pull him out.
Well, it's a fairly dozy place to go off. He would have been accelerating in second gear and probably put a wheel on that right-hand curve, but controlling a bit of oversteer, power sliding out of a second gear corner shouldn't be a problem for anybody. And in fact, Diniz, to be fair, hasn't made too many mistakes of that sort in the race, but this weekend, as we said, he has. But Damon Hill is still only 4.2 seconds ahead of Mika Häkkinen. Now that stop, what we need to look at is to see whether Villeneuve can get by Gerhard Berger. We've got 2 people who are very pumped up there now. I do just wonder whether or not Williams really should have left Villeneuve out for another lap, because he was charging well, and maybe that would have got him out ahead of Berger, and that could be crucial.
Yeah, but Villeneuve was slow. Why was he slow, Tony Jardine?
As far as I could see, the pit stop went extremely well ordered, well structured, well disciplined. But when it was over, Villeneuve was actually held by the pit crew. The lollipop stayed down for an agonising extra couple of seconds because one of the Jordans, Barrichello's Jordan, was coming down the pit lane at the same time, so they held him on.
Well, while Tony Jardine was talking, you saw Jacques Villeneuve there make an absolutely stupefying passing move on Gerhard Berger, and now Villeneuve is up behind Olivier Panis, who is in 7th place. So Villeneuve has really got the bit between his teeth. We're on lap 16 in this 52-lap race. Hill is leading Häkkinen by over 5 seconds. Schumacher is 7 seconds behind Hill. Schumacher in 3rd place. Irvine is 4th. Brundle is 5th. Frentzen is 6th. Panis is 7th. Villeneuve, that we are riding with, is in 8th place. He's not going to be there very much longer, because although that Mugen V10 engine in front of him has got colossal grunt, Villeneuve is the better driver, and he proves it by passing Olivier Panis as he had previously passed Gerhard Berger. Great stuff.
And that spot really is not an overtaking spot, not for anybody apart from Jacques Villeneuve, that is, but we've seen already in the last Grand Prix at Estoril that Villeneuve has no respect for the conservative view, the conformative view as to what should happen in terms of stops. Now, we know that Ferrari are ready. Now, if this stop is going to be for Schumacher, this will be interesting to see whether or not when Schumacher comes out, he will be behind or ahead of Villeneuve. We know that Villeneuve was right behind Schumacher before he dived in for his stop. Tyres are ready for Damon Hill, we also understand, so it's looking like 3 stops they're on. Well, there could be I think a 4-stop routine. There's Schumacher, so this is the important one. Will he get out ahead of Villeneuve or behind him?
Well, I'm watching the exit from turn 18, as you and I, for that matter, are watching Michael Schumacher, who boils out of the pit lane, and Villeneuve has not yet come past. There he is, but Michael Schumacher is undoubtedly going to join the track in front of Jacques Villeneuve. So now Damon Hill leads by 6 seconds, has not stopped. Häkkinen is 2nd, has not stopped. Schumacher is 3rd, has stopped. And right behind him, Jacques Villeneuve, as we join race leader Damon Hill, that we haven't seen for a long time, because he is out there on his own, driving a careful, tactical, deliberate, cautious race, because he wants those World Championship points. But the pressure is going to be on him shortly as he comes round the 2nd spoon curve, because we believe that he is coming in at the end of this lap for his tyre stop. He's going to be 6 seconds ahead of Häkkinen, who will undoubtedly get past him into the lead, and probably Schumacher and Villeneuve as well. We'll soon see. We're almost there.
Well, Villeneuve certainly having obstacles thrown in his path on this race. He didn't get the good start. He then came in, came out again behind Gerhard Berger, forced his way past Berger, forced his way past Panis, but his stop was longer. In fact, he was in the pit lane for a total of 35.1 seconds. Schumacher 31.6. So Schumacher was nearly, well, he was 3.5 seconds shorter in the pit lane, and that's why we've got Schumacher out in front. But Villeneuve is certainly going to be the faster man. That's my suspicion. Both drivers have got new tyres on, and that's important. Let's not forget these new tyres are probably worth half a second a lap compared to a used tyre. Damon Hill now 6 seconds ahead of Mika Häkkinen, and over the last 3 or 4 laps he's really started to extend that gap that had remained fairly constant at about 4 seconds.
And the pressure, of course, that is on Damon Hill now is normal race pressure. All the psychological pressure that's been on him since Portugal, and he had it between Italy and Portugal. He could have won the World Championship in Italy and didn't. Could have won the World Championship in Portugal and didn't. Could win the World Championship here in Japan. But he's now just concentrating on doing his job. Now we're with Jacques Villeneuve, who has again gone fastest. Jacques Villeneuve is 4.4 seconds behind Schumacher, who is in 4th position. He's just done 1:44.35, and I'm waiting for Damon Hill on the next shot to come in. And here is the Englishman in the Williams out of the Spooker.
Now, Damon Hill's stop should take, we think, about 25 seconds. That's what he'll lose. There are the tyres being ready for him. Damon Hill is 26 seconds ahead of Michael Schumacher, so it might just get him out, well, it should get him out ahead of Michael Schumacher, but that was a quick stop from the Ferrari team. Villeneuve, there goes Hill, and he's coming into the pit lane. Pit lane speeding can be a problem here, because when you follow Hill going down to this pit lane, you'll see there is no slow chicane before the white line that designates the 75 miles an hour speed limit area. There we go. So he's got to make sure he does slow down below that before he presses his speed limit button.
And Häkkinen is coming in as well. He's in 2nd place, so it could well be that Eddie Irvine will go through into the lead. Irvine's coming in as well. So the first 3, that's Damon Hill. And oh, this is not good. 11 seconds, whatever, that's not good. He had to wait for Eddie Irvine coming in ahead of him. And you can see Damon Hill on the left, and there is Michael Schumacher. And there behind is Mika Häkkinen, and that is in 4th place, Jacques Villeneuve. Wow. Now, things are really, really getting hot in Japan. We're on lap 19. It's a 53-lap race. Damon Hill has been in, so has Häkkinen, so has Irvine, so has Schumacher, so has Villeneuve, and Gerhard Berger was up into 6th position. Remember, Gerhard Berger, who had that problem after he had to come in and get a new nose cone after colliding with the back of Damon Hill's Williams early on in the race when he was trying to push the Englishman and take 1st place away from him. So, lap 19, we're getting up towards half distance, a few laps off it yet, and Jacques Villeneuve fighting. His motto is never give up, because if you give up, you can be sure that you're going to lose. If you don't give up, anything could happen in front, and it often does.
Now, therefore, it wasn't just Jacques Villeneuve that had that lengthy time in the pit lane. Both Villeneuve and Hill, coincidentally, got held in their places because of other traffic coming by. One a Jordan, one a McLaren, one a Ferrari, rather. And indeed, Hill was in the pit lane for a total of 35.4 seconds. Villeneuve, 35.1. Häkkinen, 31.1. And we know that Schumacher was 31.6 too. So there is more to a long pit stop or a short pit stop than how long you're stationary, how fast the mechanics work, and how quickly you as a driver can get underway. There's also the fact that you may be held up because of other traffic coming by you. And that's worked adversely for both Williams drivers.
And this gives us an opportunity to just settle down and take a deep breath and think about everything that is happening as Jacques Villeneuve crosses the line, pursuing Michael Schumacher. They're on lap 20 now. Damon Hill is just 1.5 seconds ahead of his major rival of the last 2 years, Michael Schumacher, who beat it to the World Championship in 94 and 95. Mika Häkkinen in the McLaren is in 3rd place, 3 seconds behind Hill. That is Jacques Villeneuve, 4th position, 5.3 seconds behind Hill. Eddie Irvine is now 10 seconds in 5th place behind Hill, and Gerhard Berger is 12 seconds behind Hill in 6th position. The other positions very quickly. Brundle and Barrichello in the two Jordans are 7th and 8th. Frentzen is 9th, Parnis is 10th, Herbert in the second Sauber is in 11th position. Jos Verstappen is in 12th position. And David Coulthard, of course, is out of the race. And so now, as you look at Damon Hill, he comes down. He can see Michael Schumacher in his mirrors. It's even Steven, virtually. They have both stopped once. They're both going to stop at least once again.
Yes, I think that's an important point to make, that I think we are seeing a level playing field between these cars. We did see that earlier pit stop of Jacques Villeneuve, which does raise the question of, was he in fact making the first of 3 scheduled stops? I thought that was unlikely before the race, and I think indeed one of the reasons why his stop was relatively long was that he did stop early for the first of 2, and that again will be consistent. So we should be seeing them all with a similar amount of fuel, and that means they're going to be running around now until about lap 36, lap 38. We're on lap 21 as we speak, so we've got another 16 laps of racing, very close racing, because there is not much between any of them.
You always hope that the last race of the 16-race World Championship Series is going to be the race where the World Championship is decided, and you also hope that it's going to be a good race. Well, the World Championship is certainly going to be decided at the last race of 1996. We know that between Hill and Villeneuve, but it is a good race. Look at this, lap 21 out of 53, and there is under 5 seconds between the top 4. Hill, Schumacher, Häkkinen and Villeneuve.
At the moment, Damon Hill out in front, but Hill is the second fastest man on the track. Yep, it's Jacques Villeneuve who's the fastest man on the track. He's last lap 0.3 of a second faster than Damon, and now he's closing up on Mika Häkkinen, but that's going to probably draw to an end the chance for Villeneuve to eat into that lead of Hill's, because Häkkinen's going to be a difficult man to pass. He's hard, every bit as hard as Eddie Irvine, but he's also someone who's got a very good engine. That Mercedes V10 is extremely powerful. The McLaren's a much better car now than it was at the start of the year. Now we're going to have to try and look forward to Villeneuve trying to do to Häkkinen what he did to Eddie Irvine. Villeneuve will at least have the advantage that Häkkinen won't know necessarily how he did that move with Irvine, and that was where it happened. So Villeneuve's possibly superior speed through that preceding very fast 160 miles an hour corner will be the crucial thing.
Right, well, it's time for a World Championship report at the present moment. You know that if Damon Hill finishes in 6th place or higher, never mind 1st place, he will be world champion. But what is the situation in the Constructors' Championship between Ferrari and Benetton, who started this race separated by 1 point? Well, the answer is that Ferrari are coasting home, metaphorically speaking, because Michael Schumacher is on 6 points. Jean Alesi is out of the race. Eddie Irvine is on 2 points, so that's 8 points for Ferrari at the present moment. Gerhard Berger in 6th position is only on 1 World Championship point. So at the present moment, Ferrari are 7 points ahead in the Constructors' Championship. But we're still not halfway through the Japanese Grand Prix as you look at Damon Hill leading now and extending his lead, because he's 2.3 seconds ahead of Michael Schumacher, having done his previous lap 0.4 of a second faster than the German double world champion.
Well, he is extending it, but not by a significant margin at the moment. The gap has waxed and waned. And in fact, the closest battle is that between Gerhard Berger and Eddie Irvine. Irvine in 5th, Berger in 6th. Berger is just 0.7 behind him, and that means effectively he's all over the back of the Ferrari. So as and when we see that, look out for the Ferrari of Berger. It'll be, sorry, the Ferrari of Eddie Irvine. It'll be Berger in the Benetton right behind him. Let's hope we see both cars in one piece rather than seeing any half-spun Ferrari, half-spun Benetton, or a bit of front wing dangling once again. Now here is the point. This is the one into the chicane. Villeneuve knows he's too far away. Now Villeneuve is 1.47 seconds behind Häkkinen as they cross the start-finish line on the previous lap. Has he closed up? That's the question. Well, it doesn't look a lot different, but it probably is closer. And they cross the line, and he is indeed, he's 1.1 seconds. He's 0.3 of a second closer. Now that's close enough for Villeneuve to try and make up the gap during the course of this lap. And in comes Berger for another stop. Now that's, of course, this is his first stop for fuel. Not forget the first stop he did was for that front wing, and they wouldn't have put fuel in. Now let's see how long they stop. Well, it's a short one, and 6.2 seconds. Maybe they put a bit of fuel in when they did that wing.
And Martin Brundle is coming down along on the track just behind Gerhard Berger. It's going to be a mighty close thing when Berger comes out of the pit lane, because Martin Brundle is going to be right up under his rear wing. Berger in 6th position, Brundle in 7th place. We're on lap 23, and Damon Hill there is leading Michael Schumacher by just over 2 seconds as they go round the hairpin. Hill accelerates out. Michael Schumacher, who is in 3rd position in the World Championship, he's not going to improve it because there is some 25 points between him and Jacques Villeneuve, who is in 2nd place. But Michael Schumacher, who expected to have a difficult 1996 first year with Ferrari, has done much better than anybody might have expected. He's already won 3 Grand Prix. We're riding with Hill, who comes towards us now. Round the 130R, down into the chicane. Michael Schumacher flies round the left-hander in the background, and here is Hill. That's where Prost and Senna came together in 1989. And now Damon Hill goes through to complete his 23rd lap. And he's closing up on Pedro Lamy and Ricardo Rosset, who are last and have to be lapped. And this is always a difficult point for a driver, because if the slower man that he's coming up to doesn't realise he's there, particularly on a slower sequence of corners, and doesn't yield, the man who is trying to pass him can lose all the hard-won advantage over the chap behind him, and that might happen to Damon Hill as he comes up to Portugal's Pedro Lamy and Brazil's Ricardo Rosset.
Absolutely, and of course Hill once again has got to be very, very careful in how he gets by these back markers. It's all too easy. Certainly one of the high points is getting by back markers. It's not a big risk, but it is a risk, and we're going to see probably Hill lose more time compared to Schumacher and Häkkinen. Let's have a look. 1:45.0 was Damon Hill's last lap. Now we know that he's going to be closing all the way on Lamy. Lamy previously was just 5 seconds ahead of Damon Hill. Now Damon Hill is lapping some 4 seconds ahead, so we can expect to see Hill at the end of the lap, when he comes across the start-finish line, to be right on the tail of Pedro Lamy, who himself is just 0.9 of a second ahead of Rosset. And that's a bad combination too. A couple of dueling back markers embroiled in their own battle is bad news to try and get by cleanly, because they may well be so embroiled that they don't actually even notice you're there. Villeneuve is well placed. This is well placed into that fast corner, but probably not close enough. Again, however good a driver you may be, however good the Williams car may be, to actually get very close to somebody ahead of you means that you are bound to lose downforce. That means losing grip, and it really is. If it's not impossible, it's very, very difficult indeed.
Well, meantime, Damon Hill is on his 24th lap as we ride with Jacques Villeneuve there behind Mika Häkkinen. There is the Finn, number 7 in the red and white McLaren. It'll have different livery next year when its sponsor changes. There are some who say that it's going to be the silver for the Mercedes Silver Arrows background of pre-war. Well, we'll see that next year. This year, Jacques Villeneuve is seeing the red and white in front of him, as ahead of them Michael Schumacher is now passing the tail-enders, and Lamy has been passed. Here is Rubens Barrichello, and right behind him is Heinz-Harald Frentzen, and they are battling for 8th position. That's Barrichello in the Jordan, whose teammate Martin Brundle is again out-driving the young Brazilian. Martin Brundle is in an excellent 6th position. He's finished there 3 times this year already, and as I was saying earlier on, Brundle is fighting to retain his place in the Jordan team, and he's an ideal man to accompany Ralf Schumacher, who is Michael Schumacher's younger brother. As now we look at Häkkinen in 3rd place, Villeneuve in 4th position. They've both lapped Pedro Lamy as they come out of the spoon. They are coming up to Ricardo Rosset. There he is in the red and blue Arrows car, and there is Hill. Schumacher.
Surely he's going to come the break for Villeneuve, because Häkkinen will be being held up by Rosset there. Rosset gets held up. Well, Villeneuve is closing, but he's not close enough. Too much traffic, too much congestion. But so he's passed both of those two cars there. So that was an opportunity. It's gone, and it looks like he's going to have to hang on in there until the next pit stops. Now let's look at lap times. The last time, 45.7 for Damon Hill, 45.6 for Michael Schumacher, 47.6 for Damon Hill. So Damon has lost 1.9 seconds, 47.3 for Michael Schumacher. He's lost 1.3. So as we suspected, Schumacher there taking more chances or just being more assertive, more aggressive. That's the style we've come to expect from Schumacher. We've also come to expect a more cautious style, particularly in the last few races, from Damon Hill.
Well, Damon Hill's got a clear track in front of him for quite a time now, with a bit of luck from his point of view. Having passed Lamy and Rosset, his next target to lap is Ukyo Katayama, who was 36 seconds ahead of Ricardo Rosset. So that should give Damon the opportunity to keep the pressure on and try and pull away from this battle. We now see, as we join Jacques Villeneuve chasing third place Mika Häkkinen. You're looking at V10 Renault Power chasing V10 Mercedes-Benz Power. Canada's Jacques Villeneuve, Finland's Mika Häkkinen, and Damon Hill is now on his 26th lap. Half distance at the Japanese Grand Prix. Hill leads Schumacher by 2 seconds. You're looking at the battle for third between Häkkinen and Villeneuve, who are 3.5 seconds behind Hill. Fifth is Irvine, who is 9 seconds ahead of Martin Brundle in the Jordan. Seventh is Berger. Eighth is Barrichello. Ninth is Frentzen right behind the Jordan. In 10th place is Olivier Panis. 11th is Herbert. 12th is David Coulthard, who had that terrible start. 13th is Jos Verstappen in the second arrows. 14th is Ukyo Katayama. 15th and lapped are Ricardo Rosset, and 16th Pedro Lamy. And Mika Salo is out of the race. Pedro Diniz is out of the race, and that makes up the 18 starters on lap 27. And Katayama's front wing has been broken. You saw it vibrating under braking there. And the Japanese driver, look, it's all askew. He's going to have to come in and get a new wing. Indeed, I can tell you that he's got, Rosset has got that penalty. Well, now here's a replay. Let's see what happened. There is Katayama coming up to Rosset in the chicane. This must be where Katayama's wing was broken. Rosset accelerates away. He's kept clear air between himself and the Tyrrell. Well, it is already broken, you can see that. And they're still together. We're back live. And this is Ricardo Rosset, and he is in 15th place, and Katayama now must come in. He's losing an enormous amount of downforce. Down to the chicane and into the pit lane. Now look out for you. Now you can see how long this pit lane is. They've got to keep up racing speed here, and when they see that white line, they must not be doing more than 75 miles an hour after they've crossed it. Notice the way his car slows. Now we're with Ukyo Katayama. Watch the way the Tyrrell mechanics, who will be well drilled at this, stops, up goes the back. They're going to put on new tyres and wheels anyway, of course. There will be quick release fastenings on the nose. Off it goes. It normally takes about 20 seconds for a well-drilled team to do this. On goes the new nose, up go the fasteners. That's just to remind him that there is a 120 kilometre an hour, 75 mile an hour speed limit. And Ukyo Katayama rejoins, and he will be the last of the runners now. I didn't see whether Lamy got past him, but with that time gap, I'm sure he did. And we're back again with Damon Hill, lap 28, and he's now 2.5 seconds ahead of Michael Schumacher. And this is Ricardo Rosset, number 16, taking his 10-second penalty for blocking. And that will most certainly put him right down. So, underneath the crossover, first and second, Hill running reliably in the Williams, knowing that he's got to get one World Championship point to become World Champion. He's currently on 10 World Championship points, and his teammate Jacques Villeneuve, who needs to get 10 World Championship points, with Hill finishing no higher than 7th, and Villeneuve is currently on 3 points.
Now, the important thing for Hill now is clearly to keep up this rhythm. He's in a nice rhythm, the track's dry, the weather's fine, his car's going well. This set of tyres clearly is absolutely fine. But what he really wants to avoid is letting that gap shrink down. It's 2.6 seconds. Hit that little feather, that's what we were talking about. Just easing off from being absolutely full throttle and then down into the chicane. That's we're with Villeneuve, of course, with Hakkinen just ahead. But what happened in Portugal was that Damon let the gap get closer and closer. His lead became reduced from Villeneuve to the point that at the last pit stop, at the second and last pit stop, Villeneuve actually got ahead. And that's what Damon needs to avoid. I'm sure he can do the job on the track now. He's, in fact, having said just that, his lap advantage now is 3.1 seconds at the end of lap 28. He needs to build that up, I think, to round about 5 seconds to be very comfortable. And then when they come in for their second pit stop in about 10 laps time, it could be as soon as even 8 laps, 7 laps time, between 7 and 9 laps, something like that. He's got a cushion there that even if his pit stop is not particularly brilliant, even if he does get held up because other traffic is coming down the pit lane, it's probably going to be quite a busy pit lane once again. You know, we have got a relatively short number of laps in this race at 52, so people will tend to come in on the same lap. And he's got that cushion, and that'll help him.
And you're looking now at the battle between Rubens Barrichello, Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who joins Williams next year but is in a Sauber now, and Olivier Panis, the battle for 8th position. And Barrichello is 45 seconds behind race leader Damon Hill on lap 29 out of 52 at Suzuka. There seems to be no problem at all with the weather. You can see the clouds up there for yourselves. There are no signs of the sky darkening, and that vicious belting rain that we had for hours last night returning to Suzuka. We saw a puff of smoke on the overrun from Olivier Panis's Mugen engine there. Not necessarily a major problem, but it needs to be watched very carefully. He locks up his left rear. He's pushing Heinz-Harald Frentzen very hard indeed. Frentzen is the man who, as I said, is going to be replacing race leader Damon Hill next year. A great deal is expected of him, but now Hill is into his 30th lap out of 52 as he comes out of turn 1 into that swinging series of lefts and rights, the S-curve, left, right, and then into turn 7. Incidentally, the Ferris wheel that you see there is at Honda Land. This circuit is owned by Honda, and they have an absolutely magnificent amusement park here. And from the top of that Ferris wheel, you get a stunning view out to sea and across the track. But Michael Schumacher at the moment, his stunning view is of Damon Hill getting further and further away from him, because the gap now is 3.4 seconds as Hill remorselessly keeps up the pressure, maintains his concentration, which he must do.
Yes, and he's gradually easing away too from Michael Schumacher. Equally importantly, he's extended the gap from 3.1 seconds to 3.4, and this is what we'd like to see to give him that comfort zone. The Williams is, I'm sure, one of the best cars, the best car probably out there. I'd expect Schumacher to be second to Damon Hill. The drive that I'm particularly impressed with is that of Mika Hakkinen, and he's lapping pretty much as quickly as Hill and Schumacher. He's only 1.5 seconds behind Schumacher. It's not artificial in terms of the fact that he's on the same refueling strategy as Schumacher too. McLaren are going to be very, very buoyed by this, very encouraged by this performance from Hakkinen. Shame that we've got David Coulthard back there in 12th. He really is right out of it, of course, after having his starting problems when he didn't get underway properly. When Heinz-Harald Frentzen has just come in the pit lane, as has one of the Arrows, and it is indeed Verstappen.
Well, in a distorted sort of way, I must make the point that the boot is on the other footwork in this race and explain that the Arrows team until recently was called Footwork, and now that Tom Walkinshaw has bought it, it's reverted to its old name, and that is the team that Damon Hill there is joining next year. To join and drive with Yamaha engines, with Bridgestone tyres, and with all the resources of the TWR organisation behind him, to be able to mould a team round him for the first time in his career. He's going to be fired up enormously next year to show that he's capable of winning races in something other than a Williams, which is undoubtedly the best car in the Grand Prix series, and in which he has won every one of his 20 Grand Prix victories. He's leading on lap 31 now as we look at him, from Michael Schumacher. The gap is now up to over 4 seconds. Mika Häkkinen is 1.6 seconds behind Schumacher. Häkkinen is in 3rd place. Villeneuve is gaining on Häkkinen from time to time, but catching him is one thing, getting past him is another. He's in 4th place, and he's 14 points ahead of Eddie Irvine, who is being caught by 6th place Gerhard Berger. So I think we're going to see a battle there in a few laps' time. So there is Damon Hill. Now here's 2nd Schumacher, 3rd Häkkinen, 4th is Villeneuve. If you're wondering where Martin Brundle is, he's in 7th position. Johnny Herbert is in 10th place.
And Damon Hill is doing the sensible thing once again as Villeneuve locks a wheel, runs a bit wide as a consequence. That'll lose him a few tenths per second. But Damon, as he does so often, he's found his feet with the car. He knows how it handles now. He's familiar with his little traits, where it understeers, where it oversteers. That means that he can start to push safely without taking risks, and he's now increased that gap. He's increased it from 3.4 seconds to 4.5 seconds over the last two laps. He's lapping just under half a second faster than Michael Schumacher, and as we saw, there's the Villeneuve Villeneuve locking his right front wheel. The pit crew are getting ready to change the wheels on that car of Villeneuve's. There they are, just in case he's flat spotted that tyre badly. On the other hand, it might just be because he was indeed on a 2-stop strategy. We don't know quite what his refuelling strategy was. We also do know he's being held up at the moment. Now, if he's going to have any chance of winning this race, it does make sense to do something different. Now, what he can do that's different is either make this his last stop. This is definitely now out of sync with the other pit stops if he's going to come in, and I suspect he will if it's going to be out of sync. Now the question is, will it be his last pit stop? If it's his last pit stop, then it's going to take something like 9 or 10 seconds.
There are 16 runners at the present moment, and Tony Jardine has got news for us.
We've just heard from Anne Bradshaw in the Williams pit here that Jacques Villeneuve has a left rear puncture, so problems for Jacques Villeneuve and his championship challenge.
And that is going to bring him down, of course. He is currently in 4th position. He's 14, nearly 15 seconds ahead of Eddie Irvine, but coming in and losing time going into the pit lane, stopping for some 10 seconds or so to get that new rear wheel and tyre on it. He's coming into the pit lane now, and then having to speed up. Now, I'm going to watch for Eddie Irvine to go through in 5th position as you watch Jacques Villeneuve coming through the pit lane now. He's just opposite me, and Michael Schumacher is in the pit lane, and so is Mika Häkkinen. And there is one of the arrows going past me as out goes Mika Häkkinen, and I still haven't seen Eddie Irvine go by. Well, that has made things phenomenally difficult for Jacques Villeneuve, who's coming out of the pit lane as I talk to you. You can see for yourself as he rejoins the track. And coming towards him in the background is Martin Brundle in the Jordan in 7th position. So Eddie Irvine has got through, and Jacques Villeneuve has certainly not only lost time, but he has lost a place. And remember the struggle that he had to get past Eddie Irvine before, how he did it brilliantly at the chicane, but that was after he had been held up for lap after lap by the Irishman in the Ferrari. And it looks as though he's got to face doing that all over again. But first of all, he's got to catch Eddie Irvine. So now on lap 33, Schumacher has stopped twice. Damon Hill, who is in the lead, has stopped once. Mika Häkkinen has stopped twice. Jacques Villeneuve has stopped twice for that replacement rear tyre. In the second one, Eddie Irvine has stopped once, and Gerhard Berger is in 6th position. So watch Villeneuve back up to racing speed with a vengeance. And it will have distressed him, of course, but it won't have rattled him. Jacques Villeneuve has got an enormous amount of racing experience on his 25-year-old shoulders, because he started his career back in 1987 at the Jim Russell Racing Drivers School in Canada, and then he went on in Formula 3 in Japan. And now look at him, Formula 1, having been Indy champion last year, having won the Indy 500, having won the Rookie of the Year at Indianapolis in 1994, and Irvine in the pits. out he goes, lap 34. Ferrari rejoins, Damon Hill leads and is coming up to, it looked to me like one, oh indeed it is the arrows of Jos Verstappen, the Dutchman, who is in 13th position.
So all of the drivers, or certainly most of them now, have made their second and last pit stop. I don't anticipate any more stops from Schumacher in second, Hakkinen third, Irvine, Berger. They've all made their two. Well, of course, Berger actually is not coming again yet because he had that first stop for the new nose. But Villeneuve's made his second one, and it was very fortunate indeed for Villeneuve that that puncture should coincide with a time that was certainly not too far away from his second stop, even if it wasn't the exact time. But Damon Hill has not made his stop. He's 35 seconds ahead of Michael Schumacher, so it's going to be very close indeed when Hill comes out. Will he get out ahead of Schumacher? That is a thing we need to look for.
I maligned Verstappen. Apologies, it was Ricardo Rossi. Now we're with Villeneuve, and he has got ahead of him. And here is Damon Hill, race leader, 25 seconds ahead of Michael Schumacher. He wants a cool, calm, collected, controlled pit stop. 4 new tyres and wheels, the right amount of fuel, which is pre-measured, and that looked like an absolutely immaculate stop for me as Michael Schumacher here comes out, and Damon Hill is going to rejoin. Is he just in front of the Ferrari? Yes, he is! Damon Hill, lap 35, rejoins in the lead ahead of Michael Schumacher. So, if any hope that the Ferrari team was that they would be able to pass Damon Hill in the pits, it has been destroyed. And on lap 36, with Villeneuve now the fastest man on the track as we join him, a new fastest lap, 1 minute 44.4, 3.4 seconds outside the all-time lap record of Nigel Mansell. And he's closing up on Gerhard Berger's Benetton Renault ahead of him. In 4th position, Berger. 5th position, Villeneuve. He's out of the 130R and up towards the chicane. Down to it now, and he's going to try and go through on the inside. But Berger knows what the situation is. That's where he lost his front wing. I'm sorry, it wasn't the chicane, it was the crossover they were approaching. And Berger knows that Villeneuve is going to be swarming all over him now when they get to the chicane.
And Villeneuve also ought to know that Berger's yet to come in the pits for his second stop, so he really shouldn't try any great heroics. In fact, that's the Tyrrell of Salo there who's ahead of Villeneuve at the time. But out of the front, Damon did exactly what he had to do, and he eked out that 4-5 second lead before those pit stops. And if he hadn't done that, things really could have been quite different, because had he maintained that 2.5 second gap, I'd wager that he'd actually end up being behind Michael Schumacher. The combination of Schumacher's aggression coming into the pits, going out of the pits, meant his total stop time was shorter, sorry.
And Villeneuve goes past, and a lovely move there. Lost no time at all. Sorry, Jonathan.
Yes, Villeneuve there lapping the Tyrrell of Katayama, of course, after that nose change that Katayama had. But Villeneuve is now on the charge. He's trying to catch up behind Gerhard Berger. He's 5 seconds behind Berger, and with another 19 laps to go, I think Villeneuve will know at this point that his championship chances really are over. But he won't give up. He's going to give it his absolute best. He'll do the best thing he possibly can, and that's charge, try and make every single lap of the remainder of this race faster than the lap before, unless he gets traffic in his way, to try and just prove what's in store for us next year, when he will consider that he'll be the lead driver for the Williams team alongside Heinz-Harald Frentzen. But it also looks as if Damon Hill, if he keeps doing everything in the smooth flowing style that we've seen so much this year, is going to be able to go out of this season with that title and with a wonderful victory.
And there he is, just ahead of Michael Schumacher. Now, I won't say that Michael Schumacher has got nothing to lose in challenging Damon Hill. He has. He's got the Constructors' World Championship to lose. Eddie Irvine is in 6th position at the moment. If he stayed there, it would equal the Constructors' Championship with Benetton if Schumacher retired. But Schumacher's on 6 points at the present moment. The point I'm making is that we can't expect Schumacher to do anything foolhardy in order to get past his age-old rival Damon Hill, who he beat to the World Championship in 1994, and that controversial collision in Adelaide, beat again in 1995, and now he's chasing the world champion-elect as Damon Hill completes his 36th lap.
There we are, blocking penalty there for Katayama. Well, we saw it with Villeneuve behind. Certainly the stewards these days really are being very aggressive in improving the standards of Grand Prix driving. Now, what's an interesting scenario is that the gap there is Berger coming in. That's his second stop. That's his, well, it's his third stop, in fact, but his first one was just for the front wing, so we don't really count that. That was a good stop for Berger, now on his way for a clean run to the end of the race. Let's expect to see Katayama come up the pit lane. This really is being a tatty end to Katayama's, and that is
Villeneuve. It's Villeneuve. Jacques Villeneuve is out of the race. Damon Hill is the world champion of 1996. Wheel off Villeneuve. We'll see what happened, but whatever it was has denied him the world championship. Frank Williams looking his normal impassive self, but Damon Hill is the world champion of 1996. He doesn't even have to finish the race. If he failed to finish the race, he would still be 9 world championship points ahead of Jacques Villeneuve. But with Villeneuve waving to the crowd to indicate that he's perfectly all right, let me say, and it happened, you can see, at turn 1, just before the S-curve, and Tony Jardine knows what happened.
Yes, I've just had another word from Anne Bradshaw. The team are trying to conceal their delight at the moment. Obviously, they're divided between the two drivers, but Villeneuve had radioed in just before it happened, and he said he felt the wheel loosening up. He didn't say it had fallen off, but he felt the wheel loosening up.
There is a replay. We're going to see what happened. He felt the wheel loosening up, and the result of it was he ran wider and wider. The wheel goes past him into the gravel trap. Fortunately, it's hit by, it goes into the crowd. Oh my goodness, I do hope that nobody was hurt with that. It would have been travelling at tremendous speed. I had a wheel hit me in Spain years ago. It hit me a glancing blow and I knew all about it. But back to Jacques Villeneuve. No words of mine can overemphasise what a brilliant season this young Canadian has had. All the concentration has been on Damon Hill with his 7 Grand Prix victories so far this year. The fact that he's now world champion should in no way detract from a brilliant debut season in Grand Prix racing by Jacques Villeneuve, who came to it as an absolute tyro with oval experience and with other track experience in Indy racing for the last 2 years. He adapted brilliantly, took pole position in his first Grand Prix in Australia. He jolly nearly won it in Australia, and then he went on and won 4 Grand Prix at the Nürburgring, at Silverstone, at the Hungaro Ring and at Estoril to challenge Damon Hill right down to the last race. He is absolutely superb, and the fact that he's so good is going to make Damon Hill's World Championship victory even more sweet for him to savour. He's on his 38th lap now, and so it's Hill leading, Schumacher, and you can see the Ferrari, or will do when we get a longer shot, and see the gap between the first and second place men. Mika Häkkinen is in 3rd place, 2 seconds behind Schumacher, and catching the Ferrari. This race is not over by a long, long way yet. Eddie Irvine is in 4th place, so we've got both Ferraris in the top 4, really clinching the Constructors' Championship at the present moment. That is Villeneuve's Williams being retrieved from the track. Gerhard Berger in the only Benetton left is in 5th position, and in 6th position is Martin Brundle. He's back in the points in the Jordan, well ahead of his teammate Rubens Barrichello. 7th is Frentzen, 8th is Parnis, 9th is Johnny Herbert in the second Sauber.
Well, what a bitter blow there for Jacques Villeneuve. I really don't think that he would have been able to take the title here. That was too long a shot, but he will be bitterly disappointed not to have been able to take the fight right to the very end. But let's make it absolutely clear, that wheel coming off was obviously nothing to do with Villeneuve's driving. I'm sure it had a lot more to do with something that happened at that last pit stop when the wheel was put on. Maybe it wasn't done up tight enough. Maybe there was a problem with the seating of the wheel on the hub. Either way, it'll be a problem that was very much down to the Williams team somehow, either finger trouble or manufacturing trouble. But it's not the first time that we've had a problem with a wheel with a Williams car, and it's not the first time it hasn't just happened to Jacques Villeneuve. Katayama gets out of the car at the end of his race, because also You'll recall that it was at Silverstone when Damon Hill had his right front wheel came loose. It didn't actually come off then. It did come loose, and that was what pitched him into a spin and out of the race. But it was retained by a special device that the wheels have to do just that. So I wonder why that retaining device didn't actually keep the wheel on in the Villeneuve situation. It may just be that it came loose and got critical at such a high speed that it actually wrenched its way through the retaining device that the car does have.
But let us remember also that epic occasion when Nigel Mansell in Hungary had a wheel nut come off his Williams, and the wheel left the car and Nigel left the race. Williams do seem to have a weakness in the hub and wheel nut area. I was wondering, and I've just found out, whether or not Patrick Head there, who is the technical chief of Williams, there's a replay. You see now, look at that wheel. That's Villeneuve ploughing on. He's perfectly all right, but I am unashamedly concerned about whether the spectators are all right. A wheel and tyre assembly weighs a heck of a lot, and the momentum, the foot-pounds it would be carrying as it flew through the air at probably about 100 miles an hour would be absolutely terrific. Now, I was saying, I wondered whether Damon Hill knew that Jacques Villeneuve was out of the race. He most certainly does, if he hasn't seen the Williams parked by the side of the road in the gravel trap. He has definitely been told on the radio. So on lap 40 in this 52-lap race, Hill leads Schumacher by just under 3 seconds, knowing that he's just got to pace himself to finish, and he'll ideally now want to win this race. He knows he's won the World Championship. He will want to go out on the highest possible high by beating Michael Schumacher. Or is it going to be Mika Häkkinen? Because there are the Ferrari and the McLaren in second and third places. It's a fight to the finish between Schumacher and Häkkinen, and there it is.
Yes, the great thing now is that Damon is freed from all the conservation that he would have had to make sure that he finished this race. Before Villeneuve went off, I was going to say that actually Schumacher would doubtless have been thinking that if he can only close that gap, if he can have a lunge up the inside of the chicane, Damon is just bound to move out of the way and let him go through. So Schumacher may well have been able to go ahead and take a win here. And that's Eddie Irvine spun off there. That's Irvine, who was there right alongside Gerhard Berger. Maybe they've had a coming together. It looks like Irvine is, yes he is indeed, he's out of the race. I'm sure we're going to get a replay very soon indeed. But whilst that's happening, we also know that Damon Hill can now afford to be very assertive himself. He can now close the door firmly on Schumacher if he tries a manoeuvre. In a very dodgy place, Martin Brundle goes by, and they're going to be wheeling that Ferrari out of the way. I'd like to see a replay of what went on. It would undoubtedly have been an attempt by possibly Gerhard Berger to find a way past Eddie Irvine there. No, we haven't got a replay yet.
Well, I saw what I thought was Berger's Benetton just disappearing out of the picture as we saw Eddie Irvine spin. Incidentally, it's the responsibility of the driver to leave his car in neutral, and there's an indication on all the cars of how to get neutral for the marshals, and they need to get that car out of the way. It's the chicane again. It's the Senna-Prost place, and we're back now. It's, as far as Benetton and Ferrari are concerned, one out, one to go, because now in this constructors battle it's all down to Michael Schumacher. He's got to stay in the race and ahead of Berger. There's not going to be any problem about staying ahead of Berger. The replay, Irvine turns in, Berger is trying to get through on the inside. Irvine keeps his line, is pushed out of the way and spun by Gerhard Berger, who drives across the apex. I'm always reluctant to ascribe responsibility, but Jonathan, I'm sure you will be delighted to do so.
Well, I must say, I think Eddie Irvine did all he could. He understeered, but then he came across, he was going to stay in the middle of the road. It looked like Berger was just too committed, too fast on the approach there, and just did not have, he had too much speed to keep it tight on that right-hand part, and that's what ideally he should have been able to do. I think Irvine's going to be having strong words with Berger rather than vice versa, and of course Berger's been a bit of an expert at that this race. He's had a couple of times now when he's tried it, and both times, well, certainly lost his front wing on the first occasion and has put Eddie Irvine out on the second. But one of the problems is that the circuit is desperately difficult to overtake on, and when you get that situation, drivers will progressively consider that more and more remote possibilities really are on, and that's undoubtedly what happened there. But this is probably the drive of the race. Mika Häkkinen in the Ferrari, right up with Michael Schumacher at 3/4 distance. This really is absolutely superb. Häkkinen really is, to my mind, one of the best drivers out there. He's very close to Michael Schumacher. He's driving superbly now that he's fully recovered from the accident. Villeneuve goes back. But this is marvellous stuff from Häkkinen and McLaren.
Yes, Mika Häkkinen in the McLaren MP411. He's driving an absolutely superb race, trying to get that second place. Mika Häkkinen has had 3 third places this season, but he's never finished on the second step of the podium. McLaren, of course, has not won a Grand Prix since Australia in 1993 with Ayrton Senna. Back in the pit lane, Tony Jardine has been rushing about. News from the Williams team.
Yes, it's just been passed on to me via Les Jones, who's one of Damon Hill's mechanics, that they passed on the good news to their driver about the World Championship situation when Villeneuve went out. They've spoken to him several times, but Damon has not responded at all, meaning he's concentrating very hard on the job in hand.
Yeah, that's called keeping your mind on what is really happening. I can tell you that all Damon's pit attendants and mechanics are wearing their lucky boxer shorts and their lucky t-shirts and their lucky anything, because they told me just before the race began, we're on lap 43 in Japan at Suzuka at the last Grand Prix of the 1996 Series, where Damon Hill has already become world champion as a result of Jacques Villeneuve retiring when a wheel came off his Williams. The battle now in the race which is holding everybody's attention, and this is it as we ride with Mika Häkkinen in the McLaren. He's trying to close with and get past Michael Schumacher, who is looking in the Ferrari for another 6 World Championship points to add to the 53 that he's got already to consolidate his 3rd place in the championship. Mika Häkkinen is in 5th position in the World Championship in a McLaren. You can see that aerodynamic new front suspension in front of him. A McLaren which really has been showing advances in the last few races. They've worked so hard on this car, and now Mika Häkkinen is actually closing, no doubt about it, on Michael Schumacher.
And McLaren are certainly going to be a lot happier now than they were on Friday evening, because throughout the practice sessions on Friday, the McLaren's front wings, and you can see them just wobbling a little bit now, were really resonating desperately at the high speed, just exactly where we saw it then. They were flapping about, and there was a major, if not a redesign, they had to strengthen those hangers, the down pillars that the front wing is mounted from the nose. A lot of work went on, and that's very unusual to have improvised repairs, but McLaren have done it, and they've done it to good effect too, and this really is quite brilliant. This is the most competitive performance from McLaren this year.
19 started, 6 are out, and they are Jean Alesi, Pedro Diniz, Mika Salo, Jacques Villeneuve, Ukyo Katayama and Eddie Irvine. And on lap 44, Damon Hill leads Michael Schumacher fairly comfortably now, because he is lapping a smidgen faster than the Ferrari on every lap. He is 4.1 seconds ahead on lap 44. Mika Häkkinen is right behind Michael Schumacher. There they both are. Gerhard Berger is 26 seconds behind Häkkinen and catching him, but not enough time to get close enough to him to get that 3rd place before the end of the race. Martin Brundle is well up in the points. In fact, Martin Brundle is currently only 1 place lower than his best finish this year. He's in 5th place. And Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the Sauber, who drives for Williams in place of Hill next year, is 6th as he was last year.
Williams have asked us to point out, incidentally, that when Jacques Villeneuve came in complaining of a rear puncture, that inspection afterwards by his engineer Jock Clear revealed no puncture whatsoever. There is speculation here that that was a start of the problems with the rear hub. That's what they're thinking at the moment.
That makes a lot of sense. Certainly sounds like it. It would probably feel that way to Jacques Villeneuve, and they could see that it wasn't.
Yeah, so we should also point out that with that information, the fact that that wasn't a puncture, that maybe the problem had nothing to do with the mechanics. I would hate to feel them in any way responsible, but it may have been something to do with the hub, the bearing. Without looking at the components, of course, and only Williams will know that once they get the car back, it's impossible to know exactly what the problem was.
Is Damon Hill, as you watch the battle between Michael Schumacher and Mika Häkkinen for second position, going to go out of the Williams team at the end of this race in the very, very best possible way to have clinched the World Championship by winning his last race with the team? And it would be if he won, and he still has to do another 8 laps before he can enjoy that privilege and honour, and if he does so, it would be his 21st victory, all of them with Williams. And the battle for second rages, Schumacher and Häkkinen. Berger is still third, Brundle is still fourth, and Brundle is still fifth, and Frentzen is still sixth.
A very, very good drive indeed from Martin Brundle. His best position so far this year has been fourth at the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, but of course that was a race that was peppered with incidents because of the infamous tyres that had so much, and therefore it had so many retirements. So a very, very strong, this is Brundle's strongest performance, and it couldn't come at a better time because he is determined to prove to the Jordan team and to Peugeot that he's the man that should remain at the Jordan team next year. They've signed Ralf Schumacher. The second driver is currently undecided, but this will undoubtedly strengthen his position. Meanwhile, Rubens Barrichello is strongly rumoured to be going to the Stewart team to go and be alongside Jan Magnussen, who has now been confirmed for next year there.
And just to add to the speculation, Norberto Fontana, the Argentinian young Formula 3 driver, a real hot shoe, is rumoured to be going to the Sauber team. That leaves the question of where, if anywhere, will Holland's Jos Verstappen, a very excellent driver, who's had a lot of stick from seemingly making a lot of mistakes this year, but a lot of them were caused by car breakages. Where will he go? Well, we're on lap 46 now. Damon will soon be in that situation at the close of a race where you're in front, where you have been in front all the time, and you start to worry about noises that you thought you hadn't heard before. But if Damon wins this race, it will have been as a result of giving a lie to the reputation that he had got at the round about the middle of the season for making bad starts. It was deserved at that time. He made 4 or 5 or 6 bad starts. But here today, from second on the grid, behind the man that could beat him in the World Championship, this is Johnny Herbert, who's being passed by Mika Häkkinen. Or is he? No, he is absolutely not, because Johnny Herbert there is resisting the McLaren as hard as he can possibly go. It's David Coulthard. My apologies to David. I was watching that fluttering one front wing of his. They may have reinforced the wing, but it certainly doesn't seem to have put it right. In practice, it was going up and down like a bird's wings. I thought the front of the car was going to take off the ground by itself as a result of its own lifting power. Well, they've made it better with fillets in the supports and with reinforcement underneath the wing, but you can see it's still vibrating.
Yeah, poor old David Coulthard is going to be very frustrated, very disappointed with this race. He will have driven as hard as he possibly can. His qualifying wasn't good, and then of course he had the problem and didn't take the start, and with his engine problem he's come back from it. But basically he's got bogged down. We know how difficult it is to overtake, and those bit of overtaking that we have seen attempted has generally come to grief here into that chicane with tangles, and that could yet be the outcome of this. 2 British drivers. We've got Johnny Herbert up there, whose future with Sauber is secured for the next 2 years. Sauber are currently weighing up between using Ford customer V8 engines next year and the Hart engine. But to add insult to injury for David, he's going to have to come back to the paddock and see his teammate Mika Häkkinen being very much the centre of a great deal of adulation and glory. And whilst he'll be delighted for the team, that does just add to the disappointment that one feels with one's own performance.
Coulthard and Johnny Herbert in McLaren and Sauber respectively, fighting for 9th position, and David Coulthard in 10th place has not been lapped by Damon Hill. Jos Verstappen, who is 11th, and Coulthard dives out of Johnny Herbert's slipstream and moves up into 9th position. Now, to coin a phrase, I started so I'll finish. I was talking to you about Damon Hill, and if he wins this race, he's on lap 47 now out of 52. it will be as a result of an absolutely superlative start where he passed Jacques Villeneuve in pole position, and now we're back again with Mika Häkkinen, and he is only less than half a second behind Michael Schumacher. He's gone quicker and clipped quicker, he's closed the gap, but now on lap 47 at the end of it for them, coming through to start another lap, he is in this classic situation of being close to the car in front, and the closer he gets, the more aerodynamic buffeting he gets on the front wings, which already are a bit suspect, as we've seen from David Coulthard's car, and that reduces downforce. The reduction of downforce means there's less grip on the front wheels, which of course steer the car, so it makes it very, very difficult to get past the man in front. And you can usually only do it by out-psyching the man in front, forcing him to make a mistake. Now, in Häkkinen's case, that is the man in front, Michael Schumacher, double world champion in his 85th Grand Prix. I don't think Schumacher is going to make any mistakes. So it's likely that the situation will stay like this to the end of the race, where on lap 48, Damon Hill, having taken the lead after the aborted start when David Coulthard stalled his engine, has literally, we've seen that in the past, this is lap 48, it's a 52-lap race. Damon Hill is going through now, completing another lap. He is now into his, you can see, just 4 laps remaining between Damon Hill and victory. He's already world champion, and those 4 laps are 3.6 miles each.
Well, if there is any consolation for Jacques Villeneuve, it's one minor point in that he's set the fastest lap of the race, but also I think that he would have felt vastly different had he been out in front and Damon Hill been retired when he had that wheel problem. It really occurred at a time when it was unlikely to affect his World Championship challenge. Meanwhile, we've got Häkkinen, who continues to chase hard all the way with Michael Schumacher. And the significance of this performance from Häkkinen and McLaren has nothing to do with perhaps Schumacher being off the pace, because he's still only 6 seconds behind Damon Hill. So it really does look like a much stronger performance from Häkkinen and McLaren.
And Damon Hill will take the World Championship with him to the TWR Aeros team, who will therefore be numbers 1 and 2 in 1997. I don't know what the livery of the car is going to be, because the sponsors have not been announced, and of course it's going to make it much easier for Tom Walkinshaw and his merry men to get the money they need, with the knowledge that they're going to have the world champion in car number 1. At the other end of the spectrum they'll have as number 2 Pedro Diniz, the Brazilian, who, to be fair to him, has improved a lot. He hasn't improved enough. He's one of the retirements in this race. There are 13 cars left out of the 19 which started, as Damon Hill goes through into his 50th lap out of 52. He's now over 6 seconds ahead of Schumacher, who has got Häkkinen right behind him. Berger is 4th. Brundle is in the points in 5th place. So is Frentzen in the points in 6th place. Then it's Parnis, Coulthard, Barrichello, Herbert, Verstappen. Lamy is 12th. Ricardo Rossit is 13th and last.
Well, Damon can really enjoy these last 3 laps. He knows he's world champion. He's not worried about the car, and this is absolutely magnificent. A wonderful way for Damon Hill to culminate his Grand Prix career. His 8th Grand Prix victory this year, absolutely fantastic, and at a circuit that perhaps the performance here reflects what a changed man Damon Hill is here too. Last year he spun off into retirement. This year he's going to win the Grand Prix to clinch the title. Only once has Hill gone off this year. I beg your pardon, twice. And once was at Monza in Italy with the tyres, and the second time in that dreadful rain in Spain. But his Williams car has only once let him down, and that was in Britain when he had the wheel problem. And other than that, he's had the best finishing record of anybody in Formula 1. If he finishes this race, it will have been 14 Grand Prix out of 16. And one of his advantages has always been that when he's going, when he's smooth, he's very, very fast indeed. He's made very few mistakes, and I'm delighted to see him have this end to this year with that World Championship. I remember Damon when, in fact, I was doing his physical training for him. His exercise regime right back in 1989 when he was in Formula 3 with Martin Donnelly, and it's also a great pleasure to see him come so far and get what he's worked so desperately hard to achieve, and he really does deserve it.
But he's won nearly a third of the races that he's driven in. This is Damon Hill's 67th Grand Prix. If he wins it, and I'm not going to say he is going to, although he's mighty close to it, he will have won 21 of them, and he already has the third highest wins to starts ratio in the history of Grand Prix racing, beaten only by the immortal Jim Clark and Juan Manuel Fangio, and nobody would be ashamed of having men like that ahead of them in the record. Hill has driven absolutely marvellously, as has the man we're with now, Mika Häkkinen. Incidentally, Damon Hill is on his 51st lap. He's only got one lap to do at the end of this one, and still Häkkinen is pushing right to the end to get that second place away from Michael Schumacher. It doesn't matter what the gap is in terms of time, as they go under the crossover up to the hairpin. You can see what the gap is.
Yep, Damon Hill is indeed man of the year, but Mika Häkkinen is man of the race. I mean, no doubt about that whatsoever. But it looks like the constructors too will be going to Ferrari, who have got Schumacher in second place with 6 points for them. Berger is in fourth place with 3 points. So providing that Schumacher maintains position ahead of Berger, it means Ferrari for the World Constructors' Championship ahead of Benetton, and in second place behind Williams. I should just stress that Williams, of course, have clinched it so long ago, the Constructors' Championship, that we've nearly forgotten about that.
Yes, Williams took the Constructors' Championship back in Hungary, and that was the 12th race out of 16. Never mind that, though, good as it is, because here is Damon Hill starting his last lap in Japan. And now is the time to say that we are seeing history made, because Damon Hill is the son of the great Graham Hill, the world champion of 1962 and 1965, and never before in the history of Formula One Grand Prix racing has the son of a world champion become world champion himself. Damon Hill has already done that, even if he doesn't complete this lap that he is on, as he goes round turn 7 up to the unique crossover at Suzuka, which makes this circuit the way it is. And there are the teams in their blue and white London Rowing Club caps, matching the helmet of Damon Hill, which matches the helmet of his great father, Graham Hill. This is going to be a mighty emotional occasion for a lot of people, not the least of whom is myself. And Damon Hill will be concentrating in the cockpit there, but when he comes out of it, his arms will go up, the helmet will come off. That is his wife, Georgie. She's seeing her husband become world champion. Now she's seeing him win the Japanese Grand Prix, because he is almost home. As indeed she may. She and her husband have been through some very difficult times together. They've come out of them in front, smiling.
Damon's mechanics,
and Damon Hill
his engineers and everyone who supported him in his time in Formula One. It's fantastic.
Thank you very much.
And I guess that was Georgie. I'm sorry, I didn't realise I was talking across her. My apologies to her. Well, I really am, for once, almost at a loss for words. I am so happy